Howdy, howdy. Welcome to the Live Life Simple freeze drying room. If one of your New Year's goals is to get into freeze drying or learn more about freeze drying, maybe purchase a freeze dryer, you've come to the right place. I've been freeze drying for over 6 years, and today we're going to answer the age-old question in freeze drying: what size freeze dryer should I buy? And if you've held out this long to buy a freeze dryer, there's never been a better time to be into freeze drying because the technology has grown so much better in the last few years and the prices have come down. There's also just a ton of information and resources that are out there that weren't out there when I started. So in order to figure out which size freeze dryer you should buy, I've compiled a series of questions. Some are easy and some will eliminate some other sizes right away. So let's get into this. My first two questions are going to be really easy and potentially eliminate half of the 4 freeze dryer sizes there are right away. The first one is going to be, what is your price range? And for this video, we're going to use harvestright freeze dryers because there is a selection of 4 different sizes that will accommodate every freeze dryer from the beginner all the way up to a commercial size freeze dryer. The smallest size is actually called a small, and this smallest size is just over $2,000. Their XL is the biggest size they have. This is closer to $5,000. So depending on your budget, that may eliminate a couple sizes right away. Well, if the price didn't scare you out of the market, the next thing you need to figure out is what your electrical situation is, because 2 of the 4 freeze dryers actually use a 20 amp dedicated circuit. And that means you're gonna need an outlet that will take this type of plug. That means you're gonna need an outlet that looks like this. You're gonna need a 20 amp breaker with a circuit that is only dedicated to just the freeze dryer. So if you don't have a dedicated 20 amp circuit where your freeze dryer is gonna go, or you don't have the ability to add one in after the fact, then you've automatically eliminated the XL size and also the large size, which is the next size down from the XL. But that does leave you with 2 very good options and the least expensive options, the small and the medium. But don't be discouraged by your options of small and medium, even though it sounds small and medium. They're actually very capable of freeze drying a whole lot of food. Not only are the small and medium capable of some large food capacities, but Harvestright also just added an additional tray to every single size. So the small now has 4 trays, medium now has 5 trays. Another question that you need to answer is, how much space do you have to fit your freeze dryer? Because they can range all the way from a little dorm fridge size like the small pretty much to the size of a normal refrigerator. So if you compare me to the freeze dryer, you're gonna have something that's about 6 feet tall by the time you get it on a table. If you're creative, this small can fit into some pretty compact spaces, as long as you leave enough room for some airflow on either side of the unit, as well as the vacuum pump. The small is also pretty lightweight. I've actually picked this up and put it on here myself. The large is gonna take 3 to 4 people to place it on a table, or really just to maneuver it around, because the XL is not for the faint of heart. It's a massive machine, and it's gonna be closer to the size of a full-size refrigerator by the time you do that. And if you're planning on doing storage and some prep area in the same area as the freeze dryer, you're going to want to take that into consideration as well. And now that we have the simple questions out of the way, now it gets a little bit more complex, because you need to ask yourself, how often am I going to freeze dry, and why am I freeze drying, and what am I freeze drying? For example, if you're just a single person freeze drying, or even a couple and you're just freeze drying leftovers and small amounts of things, this is a small tray right here. If you're planning on freeze drying large quantities of the same thing over and over and over again, this is a large. So if you put them side by side, you can definitely see the difference in size and how quickly things will add up. So just for comparison, here are all 4 sizes of trays next to each other, starting with the smallest on the left. This is a small, medium, large, all the way up to an XL. You can see the XL is so huge, it makes even the large look small. And not only are the trays larger, there's more of them. So the XL is going to have 7 of these gigantic trays. The small is going to have 4 of these smaller trays. And I've owned every single size of freeze dryer now. The one I use the most is the small, but that is because I've been freeze drying for 6 years now and I have so much freeze dried food that it's just more convenient to use the small. However, if I want to freeze dry a huge amount of one ingredient, I use the XL. And a great rule of thumb for freeze drying is it's better to have more freeze dryer than you need than not enough. And just to give you a good example for each size of freeze dryer, I would say a small is good for a single person or a couple who is just freeze drying every once in a while, maybe a couple times a week. The medium is going to be good for the average consumer. It's going to appeal to the most amount of the market, I would say. So a family or a homesteader or someone who's going to freeze dry 2 times a week or maybe 5 to 6 times a month. And the medium size is the most versatile, probably the most flexible freeze dryer, especially now that it has 5 trays. The large size freeze dryer is going to be great for preppers, people that are going to put away a lot of food, probably be running their freeze dryer 24/7 for multiple years, trying to pack away a whole lot of food very, very quickly. It's also great for people that are probably starting to dabble maybe in the commercial space or starting a freeze drying candy business or food business. Last is the XL, and this is not for the faint of heart. This will do a massive amount of food. It is considered a commercial freeze dryer. There are several people that use it in a residential setting, including myself. But I will say that sometimes it's hard to fill this freeze dryer up because if you go to the grocery store, you're pretty much cleaning out the entire inventory of whatever you're freeze drying. This unit is great for people that are getting into freeze drying candy, trying to start a freeze dried candy business or a freeze drying food business. This maybe would be good for a serious prepper, but again, the trays are absolutely huge and they will hold a ton of food. The plus side of that is that you can do a massive amount of food through every cycle. And if you're considering buying this for a commercial setting, the nice thing about this is the price for what it is not real expensive and you can scale it so you can just buy multiple units as your business grows. As for me, I was so excited when this XL came out because you could do such a huge quantity of food. But I really honestly don't use it a whole lot. It's a lot to take on if you're just kind of in a residential use setting. But bang for your buck, this is definitely going to be the most bang for your buck. One thing that used to be a big factor to consider in freeze dryer sizes was the noise that they put out. And I can honestly say the XL is really not any louder than the small. You're pretty much using the same components, same style of components. Technology has come a long ways in the last couple of years and these run pretty quiet. The one thing you do need to consider is the pump. The oilless pump that's offered right now is quite a bit louder than the Premier pump. The Premier pump is the lime green one. That is a very, very quiet pump. In fact, it's hard to tell a lot of times when it's even running. Most of your noise comes from the internals of the freeze dryer, but I can say that there's really not a lot of difference in the size as far as noise of the freeze dryer itself. A freeze dryer uses many similar components as a refrigerator, so if you know how loud a refrigerator is, it's not much louder than that. It's very similar to that noise. The difference is a freeze dryer will make that noise throughout its entire cycle, whereas a refrigerator or a deep freeze or a freezer or something shuts off after it's reached its cooling level. I hope I answered your question today on what size freeze dryer should you buy. If you have any other questions, feel free to shoot them down in the comments to me, or you can check out the book. I literally wrote the book on freeze drying. You can pick this up at freezedryingsupplies.com. We have created all kinds of nifty things for the freeze dryer, as well as cookbooks, handbooks. We have dividers that divide up the trays in portions, lids for storage and freezing, and they stack, silicone tray liners, tray stackers that allow you to stack huge amounts of trays on top of each other, pre-cut parchment paper so you don't get sticky trays, food funnel, bag fillers, and we sell the bags and oxygen absorbers and all kinds of other accessories, so give them a shot. And if you want information on these freeze dryers, I've been using harvestright freeze dryers for over 6 years now, and you can go through our affiliate link, and if you purchase one, it greatly helps this little YouTube channel. In the meantime, happy freeze drying. Remember to live life simple, and we'll catch you next week.